So let's take Jordan, who values self-sufficiency and independence above all else in their adult relationships. They often keep their partners at arm's length, emotionally speaking, preferring not to share their deeper feelings or vulnerabilities. When their partner expresses a desire for more intimacy or emotional closeness, Jordan might withdraw further, viewing these desires as needy or overly dependent. They pride themselves on not needing others and might even end relationships that become too emotionally demanding, perpetuating a cycle of avoidance and emotional distance. If you find yourself relating to Jordan, you most likely have a dismissive avoidant attachment style. Hi, my name is Travis Goodman. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and mind-body coach. And in this video today, I'm going to provide an overview of the dismissive avoidant attachment style. And why should you care about this? Why does it matter? Because it has a direct impact on how you form and create deep and meaningful relationships in your life. And as you begin to recognize these patterns in your own life, in your relationships, you begin to have opportunities to change, to challenge, to grow, and to move toward a more healthy interdependence upon relationships and not overly independent and overly self-sufficient. So here now is an overview of the dismissive avoidant attachment style. So those that have a dismissive avoidant attachment style often appear independent and self-sufficient, rarely seeking the help or emotional support from others. They tend to keep an emotional distance in relationships, dismissing the importance of loved ones and detaching easily. This style is characterized by a preference for solitude, difficulty in expressing emotions, and a tendency to withdraw from conflict or emotional discussions. So how does this develop in us? When does it start? And what is the role of parents and caregivers? Well, this attachment often develops from caregivers who were emotionally unavailable or who encouraged early independence and self-reliance over emotional bonding. As children, those with a dismissive avoidant attachment style might have seemed overly independent, rarely seeking comfort or support from their caregivers, even in distressing situations. They often learn to cope with emotional needs by suppressing them, often because expressing those needs was met with indifference or rejection by their caregiver or parent. Parents might have been distant, disengaged, or overly focused on self-sufficiency, which can contribute to this development of this attachment style within the child. So what's the impact that this attachment style has on adult romantic relationships? In adult relationships, individuals with a dismissive avoidant attachment style may struggle with intimacy and vulnerability, viewing them often as a sign of weakness. They may prioritize their independence to the extent that it inhibits the development of a deeper emotional connection with their partner. This can be a result in a cycle of emotional distancing where they push their partner away, leading to a lack of emotional depth and satisfaction in the relationship. Something else I've seen in my practice, and I'm generalizing here, working with a lot of men, I tend to see a lot of men having this attachment style over the anxious, preoccupied style. And some of that has to do with societal expectations around what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine. And often we hear things like boys don't cry, showing, sadness is weakness. And so these things get embedded into a lot of boys' psyche, and they begin to have to shut down parts of themselves. And often they'll see certain emotional states as threats and find that emotions are really leading to pain or aren't useful. Or again, if I show this part of me, I'm not a man or I'm not strong. While again, our primary foundation is laid in early childhood by our caregiver, other relationships have an impact, and other relationships can change our attachment styles. And I'm curious, what have you resonated with in this video? Do you identify with this attachment style? Does someone you love or care for identify with this attachment style? Go ahead and drop in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Now, most importantly, how do we heal? What are some of those strategies? Well, the first one is going to be some form of therapy and or coaching, someone who's trained in attachment theory. So for example, I am trained and read a lot of books on attachment theory. I'm also a certified attachment-focused EMDR therapist. EMDR is a form of trauma therapy. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a form of therapy that can really be effective, especially healing those attachment wounds or what we call attachment deficits. And really that is what was missing in your childhood that you needed. And there are other modalities too that do a lot of good work around healing attachment styles. And the second one is going to be self-assessment. Is going to be bringing your awareness around this whole concept, this whole attachment style. And there are free tests you can take out there. There are books, there are articles that you can learn, that you can gain information on to better understand your attachment style. And that's going to come with some level of self-reflection. Begin to kind of be curious about, okay, how am I in relationships? Do I find that I tend to be overly independent? Do I find that when there's some type of conflict that I tend to shut down and pull away and avoid that conflict? Do I tend to find myself not saying what I need to say? Do I tend to find myself not relying on others because I really, in my mind, tell myself that people really aren't dependable? In the end, they're going to hurt you or harm you or not be there for you. Those are good indicators that you might have a dismissive avoidant attachment style. And part of that self-reflection, as another quick little caveat, is that often it's a way of survival. You probably had to shut down parts of yourself in order to survive. Much like the other attachment styles, you had to kind of disown parts of self or kind of compartmentalize parts of self in order to keep going forward. Another way of healing, especially for those identify with this attachment style, is working on communication skills, and more specifically, working on articulating your emotional needs, your particular emotions that you are feeling or sensing or feeling in your body, building a more robust emotional intelligence or emotional vocabulary. And part of that with that awareness is knowing that emotions help foster more intimacy and connection in relationships. And for those with this attachment style, another way of healing is challenging some of those myths or beliefs, especially myths like showing emotional vulnerability is a sign of weakness, or if I show sadness, I'm no longer manly or masculine, or really no one is trustworthy or dependable. And as you begin to challenge these myths, it begins to give you an open door or doors to kind of risk a little bit of kind of emotional vulnerability, which leads us to the fifth point of healing, which is gradual exposure. So really gradually exposing yourself to a little bit more emotional vulnerability a little bit at a time. Imagine it kind of like lifting a weight, that you want to start with like kind of lifting the bar. Just get a sense for what that feels like. You know, you're not going to go into a gym and go squat, 4 plates on each side when you've never lifted a weight in your life, because that's probably going to crush you. And this isn't the same for those that are risking emotional vulnerability for the first time in a long time. And often there's a lot of fear around that. There's a lot of hesitation, and most likely due to past hurts and wounds that were very real for you. And so we want to slowly begin to kind of like get into that place where we feel more confident, we feel like we have more strength, so to speak, and that we have more agency to kind of communicate our needs and what's going on. And as we do this, those with those dismissive avoidant attachment styles, they begin to learn to trust others, and that people can be and are trustworthy and dependable. And as you do that, you begin to feel this emotional closeness, which actually helps with co-regulation, helps strengthen your connection. You feel that you don't have to be overly dependent on self, because what I found with a lot of us that are stuck in this kind of attachment style, it can be very draining. It can be very isolating feeling, very lonely feeling. So part of this is learning how to co-labor with others and learning how to risk with others. And if you're interested in more attachment videos that do a little more deep dive, you're going to want to watch this next one.